Time now for the Business Spotlight on the WMAY newsfeed. It's sponsored today by SIU Family Medicine. We're talking about sports physicals. Christine Albers is physician's assistant with SIU and joins us here to talk about the importance of this. Christine, thank you so much for being here with us. Obviously, we're well into high school football season, but sports are going on year-round. Basketball's coming up, a lot of other things for which a sport physical is really important. So let's just talk about the basic definitions here. What are we referring to when we talk about a sports physical?
Yeah, so sports physical is very similar to a school physical or an annual just health physical. You need it obviously every year. And it's really kind of delving into making sure that you're safe to play whatever sport you're playing. So specifically, we want to make sure, if there's any chronic medical conditions, that those are stable. Also, that if you have any cardiovascular or pulmonary, so heart or lung issues, that those are under control. Things like asthma are very common in athletes, so we just want to make sure those are stable. Other things would just obviously be your musculoskeletal health, so making sure any joint pains are under control. If we're using any braces, that those are working well. So yeah, it's kind of just overall health exam with a few specifics for your sport.
Where are these required versus being merely recommended? I'm assuming you have to have these for most school-sanctioned sports, but if you have, say, just a youth football league or a soccer league, something like that, perhaps not through schools, are they also required there, or is it just a good idea?
They're technically not required because it's not sanctioned by the school, but very highly recommended just because we want to make sure everybody's safe no matter what they're doing, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, anything.
We think of kids with the benefit of youth, so young, so healthy. But what are some of the common issues that you come across during these physicals that might impact a child's ability to play a sport or to play it safely?
Sure. I would definitely say asthma is probably the most common and well-controlled problem that we kind of just have to make sure is under control. Occasionally we'll have a few like irregular heartbeats or a heart murmur, and that rarely happens, but when it does, it is kind of a big deal. So we would have to kind of follow up on that, whether it's having the child see a cardiologist or a heart doctor. That would be important. But the most common thing I see, honestly, is, knee pains, ankle pains from prior sprains, maybe, shoulder injuries or some shoulder pain, like if they're a baseball player or something like that.
We know that injuries go along with sports, and when we were growing up, it was always, well, just shake it off, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. Obviously, we know that some injuries definitely need attention, but how do you know when an injury on the field of play is something that really does need to be seen by a doctor?
Well, I want to say for the majority of kiddos that are definitely in high school specifically, there's always either like a doctor there during games or an athletic trainer or something like that. So that's kind of your first line of defense, especially if you do have an injury either in a practice or a game. If they're kind of expressing a little bit of concern, I think that's definitely a marker for, hey, you need to come in, you need to be evaluated just to make sure that you're safe to return to your sport. And then also it's nice because if you do have an athletic trainer kind of as around your school, we can work with them to make sure that you're doing exercises to build strength and, again, just be safe to return.
How much are you seeing in the issue of concussions? And as you noted, especially in higher impact sports, there's oftentimes a physician on site or someone who can tend to a student who might be injured. But is this something that is becoming more frequent, more common?
We definitely, I think over the last few years, there's been a light shown on concussions and how kind of serious they are, and that we need to take them very seriously, and how that we care for a child who's had a concussion. So the schools specifically have really good concussion protocols, and when they do come to see us, which we do recommend whenever they have a student that's had a concussion, we want to just make sure that they're following that protocol and that there's really good follow-up care, because sometimes concussion injuries can last quite a while, and we just don't want there to be any long-term side effects from that.
We're talking with Christine Albers, physician's assistant with SIU Family Medicine, on the issue of sports physicals. And as we've noted, new sports are starting up almost throughout the entire school year and even into the summer. How far in advance of the start of practices and competition should a student be scheduling that physical?
Ideally, before you start practices and before obviously you start games. Although we do have some stragglers that come in after they've already started. I believe there are certain exemption dates for school physicals and sports physicals that if you don't get them in time, you are kind of held out of your sport and held out of school. So obviously before then, but ideally, maybe a couple weeks before your practices start.
And is this something that needs to be done by someone with a specialty in sports medicine? Can just a general family physician, your own general practitioner, take care of this?
We actually prefer that you do come to someone who is your primary care physician or your family physician or your family or your PA or your NP, because we know your overall health. And so we do recommend that you come in to see us for, your sports physicals, school physicals, and the like.
Obviously, SIU Center for Family Medicine can provide these and a great many other services as well. So, Christine, how do people reach out to SIU to schedule a sports physical or to get other medical needs addressed?
Right. Well, we are always accepting new patients, including kiddos for school and sports physicals. The best way to reach us is either via phone or email. And our phone number is 217-545-8000. And our email is www.siumed.org.
Christine Albers, physician's assistant with SIU Family Medicine, joining us here in the Business Spotlight here on the newsfeed, WMAY on 92.7, 94.7, and 970 AM.